Well, welcome to another episode of Water Cooler Wisdom. I am Jake Blocker.
And I'm Rachael Grail. And I feel like I say my name that way at the same time, no matter how long it's passed when we record these sessions.
I agree. Yeah, I think it is the exact. I'm trying to think back to all the other episodes. I say it's like the same tone. Yeah, all of them.
But all the good podcasters do that. It's like Kai Ryssdal from Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal.
So what you're seeing is we're experts.
Yes. We've made it.
We've made it. Yes. That's what all of our millions of subscribers will. Yes. Well, Rachael, it's another of our new format ones. This is 3 of 4.
So fun. Do you know that my favorite meal always is a lunch buffet? So I love that we have a few different things that we're doing in the podcast.
Lunch buffet, yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's just so satisfying.
Yeah. Well, this one isn't new necessarily. We've done this before. We're just kind of like stapling it as one of the formats that we're using. So we have at International Associates, we do a lot of webinars. All of it, check them out. Go to our website and check out our latest webinar. But we always ask for questions in advance, and we have literally hundreds of questions.
We get so many great questions from our collaborators, our participants.
So many, so much that I was able to create a total of 16 episodes for our Q&As just so far. And I still have enough for at least about 25 more episodes. So we got plenty of content for a very long time.
And these are such great questions. They deserve to be answered. They deserve some airtime.
Absolutely. So if you are someone who attends our webinar or webinars and asks questions, please continue to ask questions because we will be answering them. And if you as a listener have questions, submit them. It doesn't have to be through a webinar. Just send them right to us.
Send them our way.
All right, Rachael. Are you ready to hop into these questions?
I'm excited. Yeah.
So we've themed all of our questions. We've organized them into general themes. And this first one is on trust and collaboration. So the first question, how can we stay focused on authentic listening when the conversation gets tense?
Way to kick it off with a banger. I want to say on the front end, I'm always doing preventions, caveats here, because we are trying to keep these succinct so that you can listen to them when you're on the way to the grocery store. I may not give you an exhaustive, thesis on trust and collaboration. We know this is a deep well, but I do want to be able to touch in on 1 or 2 things for each of these questions. So I think this is a great one. How do we stay focused on authentic listening when the conversation gets tense? I mean, this is exactly the great place to start because we know that our brains are hardwired to scan for threats. Mm-hmm. We also know that even though there isn't a tiger in the room with us, is the often used analogy, our brains don't necessarily know that. So how do we stay in a place where we can actually listen, actually collaborate with people when we're getting triggered? So really, the first thing is to just understand that this is going to happen. This is bound to happen. A lot of us have different responses to conflict or what we perceive as conflict. That's based on just who we are, our personalities, our biographies, the power dynamics of the situation that we may be in, the way that we want to protect our jobs, our security in various ways. So there's all kinds of stuff that's going to be flooding your intellectual system, your physical system. Recognizing that that's the reality, that's what we're hardwired to do is a great first step, because then we can know, okay, this is to be expected. This is happening. I'm not going crazy. I don't have to go into this like reaction. The best thing that we can do is take a beat and try to have a response rather than a reaction. Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the first things to do for that is to just know that that's going to happen. This is like baseline EQ, having an awareness. What's going on with me? How do I manage myself? What's going on with the other person so that I can listen to them? So noticing that it's happening and then doing some kind of moderating activity, some deep breaths, some moment of recognition that the reaction, the trigger has occurred,
Hmm.
so that you can recognize maybe I need to take my own temperature down a notch. Breathing is the thing that lots of people say to do. I think there's lots of other things you can do to get curious where you just have a moment of mindfulness. One thing I like to do is just rub my fingers together ever so gently and try to
Hmm.
focus in on the physical sensation of that. That gets the brain out of this reactive state and into kind of a more mindful moment. So there's that whole physical piece. Do what works for you for that. I'm sure you've been exposed to ways to calm yourself down, but that's the first thing to do.
Yeah.
The next thing is to go into, once we've managed the physical response, we need to understand the intellectual trigger response. The intellectual trigger response is the way that our minds make meaning out of things. And if you haven't studied the ladder of inference, go check it out.
It's a
It
great one.
lays out, oh, it's so brilliant. It's just like that we make assumptions based on the filters that we have, and we just like boop, 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 boop. We come to conclusions really quickly, and then
Hmm.
we respond, and that doesn't allow us to have authentic listening. So recognizing, oh, I might be making some assumptions here. I
Hmm.
might be assuming that this person means this or wants that or is demanding this. And so checking our assumptions and then trying to get into a place where we can be curious rather than judgmental.
Yeah. The filters thing is something that resonates with me, and it's something we talked about in some of our training too. That was stuck with me. I remember specifically during the training we were asked to list out what are your filters. What do you
Yeah.
see as your filters? What's something that and by that is like everything that you interact with that comes to you goes through your filter, whatever that is. White male living in middle class, that's me
Right.
plus many other filters. And I'd even challenge other people to do that for themselves. Like, don't wait until a situation happens to do this. Do this in advance, like on your own. You don't need to share this with anyone. This is just a self check of what are my filters? What are things that my brain has to process through to actually get, so I know what they are. So when I face this tense situation, I know why that's happening and I can recognize
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a great call to action. It all happens really fast.
It does.
So sometimes you can't do it in the moment really
Mhm.
as good as you'd like to. And you need to, when you're getting a habit, you can do it retroactively and think, oh, what was that? Well, how did I make that assumption? Where was I making an assumption? But also, if you know you're going into a conversation that could get tense, you can
Mm,
think about what are the filters? What are the power dynamics? What might I be assuming about what I think this person is going to want or is going to say? We kind of know a lot about how we're entering a conversation, and it can be
yeah.
really important to check on that on the front end as well.
Yeah. I would, yeah. The only thing I'm not push, this isn't pushback. This is something I recognize for myself, that and I've done that. I know who I'm meeting with. I know all of this. Sometimes I'll go to the point of over preparation, and it
Yes.
is more damaging than helpful. And so I basically script it instead of just kind of an awareness of what I'm doing, the script. And then when it goes off script, I am not ready in any way. So just be cautious of how much you think
That's
before,
a
just
good
from
call
a
out.
warning sign from someone who's dealt with that in the past.
Oh, full disclosure, my ex-boyfriend used to say that. I feel like everything when we have a hard talk, it's like perfectly prepared. And I was like, well, I'm just trying my best.
I mean, that is,
Yeah.
yeah, I do the same thing. It's part of my personality. I've talked to therapists about that, of just the overthinking. I have to
Yeah.
watch myself from the overthinking.
And, here's the like, if all else fails, and the bare minimum that you can do is focus on asking questions
Hmm.
from an open place. Like, make understanding the other person your primary priority. Even if you don't agree, even if you're not sure you're ever going to agree,
Hmm.
just you can always fall back to asking questions and seeking understanding. And
Yeah.
that's, again, a deep well. But I think that's probably enough of a start.
Great. Love it. All right. Question number 2. How can I build trust quickly to create a safe and collaborative environment?
Yeah, what a good question. I feel like I have met leaders that are really thinking about this. So I love it when people are thinking about this.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that we can do to build a safe and collaborative environment is to be clear. As Brene Brown says, clear is kind. Again, going back to like our brain's preferences are like for things that feel orderly and predictable, and like we
Mm-hmm.
can know what's coming. So we can be clear about roles, so that people know how they're going to be invited to contribute. We can be clear about participation guidelines and preventions. If we know that we're going to be having a certain kind of conversation that might be challenging. For example, like you're bringing up an initiative that people have some concerns about. You can let them know on the front end where and when in the conversation they'll have an opportunity to air their concerns. So our minds can relax when things are orderly, and we can lay out the process in a way that people can understand how it's going to go, how they're meant to contribute. And
Mm-hmm.
then, and I think also in part of that is being willing to, if you're trying to be the one to hold the environment, like you're the leader of the meeting or you're the facilitator of the meeting, whether it's a one-on-one or a more complex meeting, to have as part of those roles a clear, dedicated facilitator.
Mm.
Someone who isn't necessarily responsible for the decision and isn't necessarily the subject matter expert, but someone says, I will be managing the process. And
Yeah.
then that person is enabled to jump in if things start to go off the rails a little bit. And people are like, okay, this person's got us. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that sets up the ability for people to feel safe when they're collaborating.
I like that a lot. Something, a little shout out I'll give is something we talked about in some past episodes around desired outcomes in meetings. So when I look
Yeah.
through, if I, the night before or whatever it is, I look at my next day's meetings and I see like, okay, I have to do this. This is something we model very, very well of what we teach
Mm-hmm.
in our own organization. But if I can see this is what's expected of me in these meetings, it just kind of gives me like, okay, I need to make sure I'm prepared for this. I need to make sure I do this so I can leave some time before this meeting to do this. I come in mentally prepared to face whatever it is in that
Yeah.
meeting, feel a little bit more safe.
I love that. I love that. I think we want everyone to feel like they can contribute in a way that is meaningful, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
And when they know what it is that's expected, or when people know what the goal is, that helps them understand how they can contribute to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will say like the most successful meetings I've had have been at Interaction Associates because we know how to do these meetings. And it's weird when I, will meet with someone outside of our company and get a meeting invite that's just the title. Like, what is
Right.
this? I don't know what to do.
Who's driving this bus and where is it
Yeah.
going? I don't know. This is very stressful. Yeah.
All right, Rachel, last question
Great.
for this one. What are the best strategies for working with team members who have strong and differing opinions? That never
Mm,
happens though, right? That's just everyone
no.
agrees.
Well, this is great because we want people to have strong and differing opinions. Ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to get the best results. I mean, we're not
Truly.
looking for conflict for conflict's sake, but artificial harmony is equally as destructive. And so,
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're working on a team where that is happening, like congratulations, you're probably getting to better results
Yeah.
than maybe otherwise. And it's is important to have some guardrails so that people can contribute, and feel that sense of safety and not not damage their relationships
Mm-hmm.
in service of their opinions. So I would refer back to what I mentioned, setting up preventions. So making sure there
Yes.
is a facilitator. Sometimes it might be more of a referee,
Yeah.
or like, but having someone who can set up process guidelines for how and when people are going to share, making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and just making sure that there's like some barometer for the etiquette that works for the team. Like some people have a more a greater level of comfort with volume or heated debate than
Yeah.
others. Some people are like, ouch, injury. And so ideally, if you're that facilitator, you have an understanding of that team, you have a sense of the personalities and what's going to have everybody feel like they can contribute. I will say this to go on. It's hard for people to come to agreement when there's like one fixed position versus
Mm-hmm.
another fixed position. Like, sure, sometimes you can facilitate a compromise, but a compromise isn't necessarily the best solution. A
Yeah.
compromise is like you win some, you lose some,
Yeah.
and so that's on like an idea that there's a fixed amount of solution. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're working with a bright, dynamic team, ideally you might be able to come up with something that is beyond a compromise, that is actually a win-win, but it's more out of the box. So the way that we find that is by getting off of those fixed positions and asking questions or encouraging other people to ask questions that get below the surface of this is my opinion, this is my fixed position, and down into, well, what's important about this? What are my concerns? What are my
Mm-hmm.
fears? What are my hopes for this initiative or project or whatever it is that I feel really strongly about? That's where you can start to find some really creative solutions, some common ground.
Absolutely. Yeah, one little shout out I'll give to the preventions or ground rules,
Hmm.
part of preventions, and even in our, I always go back to our workshops because it's what comes to mind.
Yeah.
But something we do at the very start of it is we have our ground rules. We have them listed in the workshop, and
Hmm.
it's something just again knowing your audience, knowing who you're dealing with, knowing the stakes of the meeting. It could be worth having, maybe it's a slide, maybe it's something specific that has your list of ground rules that you agree upon at the start of the meeting and say this is the ground rules for today. Maybe it's like we're going to hear out everyone's opinions or
Yeah.
whatever those need to be, and making sure everyone agrees to it. Build agreement, refer to another episode for
Nice
that, but
plug.
build those agreements with them. And then during the meeting, if it starts to get tense, there starts to be something that people are getting uncomfortable, refer back, say, hey, remember
Yeah.
these ground rules. We set this at the beginning. So let's be respectful of that, and then go on.
Yeah, and ground rules are not just about how we're going to behave, but it's about you can also set up like this is the process that we're going to flow through. We're going to
Yeah.
first hear what everyone's position, and before we get into like knocking it down and telling this person why that will never work, we're
Yeah.
then going to spend some time understanding what's below the surface of their fixed position into their interests, their needs, their concerns, their values,
Yeah.
and so people can understand, oh, that's the process is going to support exploration and discovery into something beyond where I'm coming from. So I don't have to feel like it's a one and done, and we're never going to agree, and
Yeah.
that person's a moron or whatever it
We don't
is.
want that. Yeah.
I have an example that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
sure I was going to share with you on this or not, but
Well,
maybe if
please
we have
do.
time. We were recently, we're in an election year. We
Mm-hmm.
recently had an election. And before the election, I had a conversation with my father about politics.
Mm.
And we both have some differing positions
Yeah. Yeah.
there. And really, really intense, right? And I've got so many reasons why my position to me feels like the right position.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent some time arguing the policies and different things and approaches. Naturally, we didn't get very far. But then we got to a place where we got deeper and deeper and deeper. Like, what's the fears? What's the experience? And we got to a place where we recognized that all sides of the political spectrum are having a shared experience of feeling like this was a existential
Mm-hmm.
election.
Yeah.
Like everyone's feeling like the stakes are high.
Yeah.
And so what can we learn from that shared experience?
Mm.
So I know this might be like a hot button topic. We might need to edit this out for that reason. But I thought it was really fascinating because it allowed me an opportunity to have some level of, I mean, I still feel the way that I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I won't be shy about
I'm
that.
not going to change minds. Yeah.
But to recognize that there is a shared experience in the midst of this huge chasm, this
Mm-hmm.
just intractable, seemingly divide. And that I thought was really powerful. And I think that that's the opportunity that can happen because hopefully in your business settings, you're not dealing with things as intractable as the current state of our political spectrum.
Yeah. No,
And
please. No.
so you can find a common ground in terms of experience, values, goals, hopes, fears,
Mm-hmm.
when you are willing to get below the surface and get curious.
Yeah.
But that takes some listening skills. We've got lots of other resources about that. That takes some, understanding your own ladder of inference, which we talked
Mm-hmm.
about earlier. It takes some self-management and it takes some process management. And but I think the juice is worth the squeeze ultimately.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, Rachel, I think that was great. That's a good one to end on there.
All right.
That was solid Q&A session. And I feel like I just learned a little bit, even though I know a lot of the stuff. It was great.
Well, I'm always learning more from all the people that I interact with as well. So if you have something to add to the conversation, please drop us a line. We're always happy to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, until next time, thanks so much.
See you at the water cooler.
Thanks for listening to Water Cooler Wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by Interaction Associates, a leading professional development and leadership training organization whose mission is to help people work better together. If you'd like to learn more, visit interactionassociates.com. If you have questions, comments, or are interested in collaborating with this podcast, you can email us at watercoolerwisdom@interactionassociates.com.